Hey champs of Examsnet, welcome to our new series where we will be discussing the chapters of class 11th and 12th biology. Our previous series of NEET PYQs has got a lot of love and support from you all, and this has motivated us to bring up this new series of chapter-wise discussion. I hope this new series will be as helpful to you as the previous series was, or even more than that. So let's start with the first chapter of class 11th biology, that is the living world. So we know that the world is made up of two different types of entities. One is the living and the other is non-living. Okay. Now, if I ask you a question, can you mention some of the living things that you see around yourself? So you can easily answer this question. Some of you might say human beings, some will say animals, some will say birds, insects, or even plants. So all of these are correct answers. Okay. Now, can you mention some of the differences between the living and the non-living things that you observe? So this also you will easily be able to answer. Some of you will say that the living things are able to grow in size, whereas the non-living things cannot grow in size. Also, the living things are able to move around, whereas the non-living things are not able to move around until and unless we take them and keep them somewhere else, right? So these are simple questions with simple answers. But why are we discussing these simple facts at this level? The reason is that the word living is the basis of this chapter. Okay, so it's very important to understand the concept of living. Also, this chapter, that is the living world, will form the basis of all the other chapters that we will be discussing in biology, right? So let's start with the characteristic of the living. We'll start with the first characteristic, that is growth. And this is the simplest and the most visible character of the living thing, right? So how do we define growth? Growth can be defined as an increase in mass and number of individuals or cells. Okay. So increase in mass is a simple thing. We all know that with age, the body mass increases, the size increases, height increases, everything increases. Okay. So this is simple meaning of growth. And what about the number of individuals or number of cells? So that also is known as growth. Let's take an example of the amoeba. So this is an amoeba, okay? And we know that amoeba is a unicellular organism, right? So we can say that this is a cell, okay? Because amoeba is unicellular, it has only one cell. So this is a cell. At the same time, this is an individual amoeba. So this is an individual as well. Now, when this amoeba will undergo binary fission, then what will happen? Two amoeba will be formed, right? So we can say that now two cells have been formed, okay? Because each one of them is a cell. At the same time, there are two individual amoeba that are formed after the binary fission. So two individuals are formed. So that means that in this case, what has happened? The number of cells has increased. At the same time, the number of individuals has increased. So this increase in the number of cells or number of individuals is also known as growth. Okay, so this is how we define the growth. Now there is a difference between the growth in case of plants and animals. So what is the difference? The difference is that in case of plants, the growth takes place throughout their life. Therefore, you can see the height of the plants is very large. Okay, they are in meters, several meters as compared to the height of the animals. Whereas in case of animals, what happens? The growth takes place only up to a certain age. But there are always some exceptions. So what are the exceptional body parts in case of animals that keep growing throughout their life? We know that in case of animals, including human beings, the height or the body mass increases up to a certain age. But there are some parts that will keep increasing irrespective of your age, okay? That will grow throughout your life. So one of them is nails. You know that today you cut your nails and after some time, after some days or weeks, you will have to cut them again because these are continuously growing. Similarly, the hair also has to be trimmed, right? And the other thing is replacement of lost cells. So at any age in your life, if you face an injury or an accident and you lose some cells of your body, then these cells will be replaced by the new cells. Okay, it doesn't depend on the age. Okay, it happens throughout the life. So the nature has made this possible. So these are some of the things that will take place throughout the life, right? Now let's proceed further. Now here a question arises. Okay, you can say that we are saying that growth is a characteristic of living things, but in some non-living things also growth is seen. So can these non-living things become living thing because of the growth taking place? The example is here, ball of snow. Okay, suppose you are at a cold place where you have snow and ice around you. Okay, this is a ball of snow. Okay, this is a snowball. And here we have the sheet of snow. Sheet of snow. Now, when this snowball will be made to roll over this sheet of snow, what will happen? New layer of snow will get added on the surface of the snow. So as a result, what will happen? The size of the snowball will increase. So this is also a growth, right? Because we have defined growth as the increase in size, mass or size, right? So size is increasing. So is this growth or is this a living thing? Just because it is growing in size? So the answer is no. Why? Because there is a difference between the growth in case of living thing and the non-living thing. In case of living thing, the growth is internal. In our body, the cells are continuously dividing. As a result, there is a growth in the body mass. Okay. Whereas in this case, this is a non-living thing and the growth is taking place externally. Okay, the layers of snow is getting added outside the surface. Therefore, this is an external growth, not an internal growth. So this will not be called a living thing. Okay. So what did we learn? That in case of living things, the growth must be internal. Okay, due to the reason of the growth should be internal. Internal processes that are taking place in the body. Right. Now, if you talk about the growth in population, what is the reason for growth in population? The increase in the number of individuals, right? We have discussed that the increase in the number of individuals is also growth. So the population growth is the reason of increase in number of individuals. And what is the reason of increase in number of individuals in a population? The reason is reproduction. When an organism reproduces, the number of individuals increase. So we can say that the growth and reproduction are related to each other somewhere, right? So this reproduction will be the next characteristic of the living thing. So let's discuss the reproduction. We know that the reproduction is of two types, the sexual reproduction and the asexual reproduction. In case of sexual reproduction, what happens? Fusion of male and female gametes take place, okay? So we know that the male and female gametes fuse to form the zygote, right? Zygote. Then this zygote develops into an embryo. This embryo forms a fetus, and then this fetus develops into a baby or an individual. Okay, right? If we talk about the asexual reproduction, there are various processes under this asexual mode of reproduction. One of the mode was the binary fission in amoeba that we discussed, and the other is budding in case of hydra, and there are many others. Okay, so that also we will discuss in other chapters. So we have seen that the growth and reproduction are related to each other, right? In fact, in case of unicellular organisms, growth is synonymous with reproduction. We have seen the example of amoeba. Let's see it again. Here, this is an amoeba. Okay, this is a single individual. After binary fission, two amoeba are formed. So in the previous part, we had seen this as an example of growth, increase in the number of individual as the growth. And here we are studying it as an example of reproduction because binary fission is a type of asexual reproduction that takes place in case of amoeba. So what is this? Reproduction or growth? Actually, this is both because in case of unicellular organisms where there are only one cells, here the reproduction and growth means the same thing, that is the increase in the number of individuals. Okay. Now let's proceed with the third characteristic of the living thing. So the third characteristic is metabolism. Now what is metabolism? So this is the sum total of all the chemical reactions that are taking place inside the body's cells. Okay. So there are two types of chemical reactions that are taking place. One is catabolism and the other is anabolism. Okay. Catabolism means what? Breakdown of the complex molecules into the simpler ones, and the anabolism is just different. The formation of complex molecules from the simpler ones. Okay. So in catabolism, what happens? The bigger molecule breaks into several small molecules. And in case of anabolism, from many simpler molecules, one bigger molecule will be formed. So this is the difference between catabolism and anabolism. And catabolism and anabolism together are known as metabolism. Got it? Now we'll proceed further. Here, there is an exceptional case. We discussed that all the metabolic reactions that are taking place are this is the characteristic of the living thing, right? So an exceptional case is an isolated metabolic reaction. If you go to your chemistry lab, okay, here you will see that the metabolic reactions can be performed inside the test tubes, right, under the laboratory conditions. So there also metabolic reaction is taking place. So is that a living thing? No, because we have also seen that in case of living thing, the metabolism is the sum total of the chemical reactions taking place in the body's cells. Okay, just mark it, in the body's cells. In case of laboratory, the metabolic reactions are not taking place inside the body cell, right? It is taking place inside the test tube, in vitro, right? So this is definitely a living reaction, but not a living thing, because in case of living thing, the reactions must take place inside the cells of the body, okay? So if we talk about cell, the other characteristic comes into the mind, that is the cellular organization. That is the fourth characteristic of the living thing. Cellular organization, we all know that the smallest unit of our body is cell. Okay, in case of living things, the smallest unit is cell. And we know that various cells combine together to form the tissues. Then various tissues combine together to form organs. Various organs combine together to form organ system. And then various organ system combine to form an organism. Okay. Various organ systems will form an organism. Is it clear to you? Now, we know that the several activities at the cellular level result into the various life processes. We have discussed that many chemical reactions are taking place inside the cell. We know that inside the cell of the body, there is a nucleus, there are cytoplasm, and inside the cytoplasm, various organelles are present. Okay. So all these combinedly work to perform the metabolic reactions. Okay. So due to these metabolic reactions that are taking place inside the cell, several life processes will be resulted. Okay. For example, the respiration, then digestion, excretion, etc. All these are result of these cellular processes. Okay. These metabolic processes that are taking place at the cellular level. So we have discussed four characteristics. First one was growth. The second one was reproduction. Third one was the metabolic reactions. Then the fourth one was cellular organization. And the fifth one and the last one that we have to discuss is the consciousness. It is the most important characteristic of the living thing. Okay. Because we all living things are able to respond to the environment. Okay. So this ability to respond to the environment is known as consciousness. The example will be stimuli. Suppose you close your eyes, okay, and someone keeps a hot cup of tea on your hand. Will you be able to know what happened with you? You don't know what exactly happened, but at least you will feel something hot. Okay, you will immediately remove your hand from there, right? Why? The reason is this stimuli. It sends a message to you that something hot has been touched, right? So this is an example of consciousness. This was possible because you were conscious. You are a living thing and you are conscious of your environment. Even though your eyes are closed, you can understand that something that is hot has been touched with your hand. Okay. Similarly, in case of plants, you would have heard of touch me not plant. Touch me not. If you touch this plant, the leaves of this plant will shrink. Okay, that is also an example of stimuli. So that plant is also able to respond to the environment. Okay, so this is an example of living thing having the consciousness. Okay, but again, some exceptional cases always exist. For example, in case of growth also we saw that the non-living thing, that is the snowball, was able to grow in size, but still that was not a living thing, right? Similarly, in case of consciousness also, you can see that there is a person who is in coma. So if he is in coma, what happens? He is not able to respond to the environment, right? He is brain dead. That person is brain dead, but still he is not completely dead, because some metabolic reactions might be taking place inside the body, right? And the person might also be able to grow in size while being in coma. So there are many other characteristics that are present here. So just because he is not able to respond to the environment due to some exceptional situation, so it does not make that person dead. He is a brain dead but not a completely dead person, or he is not a non-living thing. Okay. And one more example I will give you of the exceptional case, right? In case of reproduction, we saw that the living things will be able to increase in number. Okay, there will be an increase in number of individuals, and the living thing will be able to reproduce. So there will be an exceptional case where a living thing is not able to reproduce. For example, an infertile in organism. Okay, it might be a human being or an animal. So that infertility does not make that organism a non-living thing just because it is not able to reproduce. Okay, so it is not necessary that the living thing will have all these characteristics. Okay, it's not necessary, but no, none of the non-living thing will have these characteristics. Okay, all these characteristics belong to the living things only. Some of the living things might not have one or more of these characteristics, but it does not make them non-living thing. Okay, and there are some exceptions. So exceptions do not change the concept. Got it? The next topic is diversity in the living world. Okay, so we know that there is a huge variety of living organisms on the earth, right? There are millions of species present on earth, and the number of species that are known and described range between 1.7 to 1.8 million, right? And this diversity or this variety in the living organisms is referred to as biodiversity, or the types and number of organisms present on the earth. Okay, now, you all are biology students, so some of you might go for higher studies abroad, right? So you just imagine that you moved abroad for higher studies and people from around the world have come to study the same things, okay? So you all have different languages because different parts of the world have different cultures and languages, right? So people coming from different parts of the world will be familiar with different languages. For example, people coming from France will be familiar with French. People coming from Germany will be familiar with German, okay? And you are familiar with Hindi and English, okay? And not French and German. But you all have to study the same thing at the same place. So how is it possible? So scientists have come to the conclusion or to an understanding that it is very important to derive a common scientific language so that all the students or scientists can study the same things, right? So it is important to give a scientific name to the organisms because there are millions of organisms. How can you remember the names of the organisms in different languages? It's not possible practically. So it is important to have a common scientific name of the organisms. Okay, and this process of naming of the organisms is known as nomenclature. In general, the word nomenclature is a system of naming within a particular field. Okay, in general, we are not talking about the biology in specific. So it is the process of or system of naming something. But in biology, it is the process of naming of organisms, right? And now when you know the names of the organisms, scientific name, then it is also important to describe the organisms correctly, right? In order to study about the organisms. So this description, the process of description is known as identification. Okay. So that you identify the organisms by certain description or certain characteristics of that organism. So what is identification? It is correct description of the organisms. Okay. So these are the processes of study about the organisms. Now, when we talk about the naming of the organisms, so different rules are followed for naming of plants and animals. For example, for naming of plants, we use ICBN, that means International Code for Botanical Nomenclature. Okay. Similarly, for animals, ICZN is used, that is International Code for Zoological Nomenclature. So using these codes, the animals or plants are named. Okay. Now, what type of nomenclature is done? Binomial nomenclature is done. That means the scientific name of the organism will have two components. Okay. The first component will be the generic name. That means the first component of the name will tell you the name of the genus that the organism belongs to. And the second component of the name will be the specific epithet. That means it will tell you the name of the species that the organism belongs to. Okay, here is an example. For mango, the scientific name is Mangifera indica. So Mangifera is the generic name. What is the genus of the mango? It is Mangifera. And what is the species? The second component, that is indica. Okay. Now there are other universal rules of nomenclature. So let's see what are these rules. As we have discussed that people coming from different parts of the world will be able to understand different languages. Okay, so we have arrived at conclusion that same language has to be used by each and everyone. Okay, everyone has to accept this. Okay, so that common language is Latin. Which language you will be using while studying about biological organisms? Latin language. Okay, and the style or font that will be used while typing the names will be italics. This will indicate the Latin origin. Okay, and it will be irrespective of the origin. The uh, organism might belong to some place, but it's not required to name the organism on the basis of the place where it belongs to or where it is discovered. Okay, the language that you have to use is Latin only. And as we have discussed that the first component will represent the name of the genus and the second component will represent the name of the species. Okay. Then we know that when we are typing the name of the organism, then it has to be written in italics font. Okay, it has to be typed in italics font. But when we are writing the name by hand, then there are different rules. That is, both the component will be underlined separately. Okay, so if you are typing, you have to use italics font. If you are writing by hand, then you have to underline the word separately. Okay, then this next point we have already discussed. It will be printed in italics to indicate their Latin origin. Then the next rule is that the first word, that is the name of the genus, will always start with a capital letter. Okay, whereas the second word, that is the name of the species, will always start with a small letter. Got it? And at last, we have to write the name of the author in an abbreviated form. So here is the example of mango again. The name is written like this, Mangifera indica Linn. So we have discussed that the Mangifera is the genus and it will start with a capital letter. So it starts with a capital M here. And the second one, that is species, will start with a small letter. So small I is there in indica. And since I have written it by hand, so I have underlined both the words separately. Okay, and Linn is the abbreviated form of Linnaeus because this species was described by Linnaeus. Okay, now let's proceed to the next step. We have studied about the nomenclature and identification, that means description. The next step will be the classification, because there are millions of species, okay, 1.7 to 1.8 million species. How is it possible to study about each of those species? It is not possible. So in order to simplify the study, we have to classify them into certain groups based on some common characteristics, right? So you have to keep in mind the common characteristics of each of the group, and all the organisms belonging to one group will have the same characteristics, right? So what is classification? It is the simplification of the study of the living organisms, okay? And it involves the grouping of organisms into convenient categories based on some easily observable characters, okay? Now the next word is taxa. So taxa is what? It is the hierarchical division of a species. But in general, just remember that the word taxa means category. Okay? Taxa means category. So each category will be known as a taxa. And taxa is the plural form of taxon. Okay? Taxon will be singular and taxa will be plural. And what is taxonomy? It is the classification of organisms into different taxa. So we have discussed that we have to simplify the study by grouping the organisms into different groups, okay, by classifying them into different groups. So this process of classifying into different groups is known as taxonomy, okay, because we are dividing them into different categories. Now, what are the basis of taxonomic studies? So when we are going to classify the organisms into different groups, there are certain features or certain characteristics that we have to keep in mind while classifying. Okay, we will be classifying the organisms on certain basis. So what are these bases? So what we have to keep in mind? First one is external and internal structures of the organisms. Then the structure of the cell, because we know that all the activities taking place inside the cell are very important for the life of the organism, okay? So structure of the cell is also important. Then development process, because this also varies from one organisms to other. And the last one is ecological informations. So these things have to be kept in mind while classifying the organisms into different groups, okay? Now, what are the basic processes that are used in taxonomy? So we have already seen nomenclature is important. We should know the names, scientific names of the organism. Then we have to be able to describe the organism correctly. So identification is important. Characterization, that means we should know the specific characters of the organisms, and on the basis of those characters we will be classifying them into different groups. So characterization and then classification. So these are important processes that are used in taxonomy. Now we come to systematics. So what is systematics? It is the branch of study that deals with the organisms and their diversities as well as the relationships among themselves. Okay, so this branch of study is known as systematics, and this word systematics has been derived from the Latin word systema, which means systematic arrangement of the organisms. Okay, and Linnaeus has used this word systema in his publication, that is Systema Naturae. Okay, this is the publication of Linnaeus, right? And this branch of study, that is systematics, considers the evolutionary relationships between the organisms. Okay, that means their ancestral relationships, how they have developed, what is their origin, all those things. Now we come to the taxonomic hierarchy. We have seen that the organisms are classified into different levels or different categories. So here I have written this just to give you an idea that rank, category, taxon all have the same meaning. Okay, these can be used interchangeably. So we know that they are divided, the organisms are classified into various levels. So the bottom one is the first level, okay, level 1. Level 1 is the first step. Then level 2. Level 2 is the second step, and this way the level goes on increasing from bottom to top. Okay, so this is the first step, then second step, then third step, and so on. First step is also known as rank 1 or category 1 or taxon 1, because taxon means category only. Okay, the second rank is also known as second category or second taxon. The third rank will be known as third category or third taxon. So all have the same meaning. Now, let's see what are the levels in which the organisms have been divided. So the first level is the species. Okay. The smallest level is the species. Then the second is genus. Third is family, then order, then class, then phylum, and at last kingdom. Okay, so which is the highest level of classification? Kingdom is the highest level of classification. Okay, we have an example here. We have taken the example of human beings. Human beings. So what is the scientific name of human beings? It is Homo sapiens. Homo sapiens. So as per the rule, Homo start with capital H and sapiens start with a small s, and both will be underlined separately, right? Now, the first one, that is Homo, is a genus and sapiens is the species. So the lowest level of classification is species. So in this case, what will be the species? Sapiens is the species. Next level is Homo, that is the genus. Then the next one will be the family. So the human beings belong to which family? Hominidae family. Okay. Then order. Order is primates. We belong to the primates order. Okay. Then the next level is class. So we belong to which class? Mammalia class. And the next level is phylum or division. So the phylum of human being is Chordata. And the kingdom that we belong to is animal kingdom. Got it? Now here you have to keep one thing in mind, that since animal is the highest level, so this category, animal is a category, okay, this is one of the category. So this is also known as a taxon. Chordata is also a category in this hierarchical division. So this is also a taxon. Mammalia is also a taxon. Primates is also a taxon, hominidae is also a taxon, Homo is also a taxon, and sapiens is also a taxon. Okay, so each one of the category will be known as a taxon. Got it? Now, animal kingdom will have several phylum under it. Okay, see, one kingdom will consist of various phylums or various divisions. Each of the phylum or division will consist of various classes under it. Each of the class will consist of various orders within it, and each of the order consists of various families. Similarly, each family will consist of more than one genus, and each genus will consist of more than one species. Okay, now let's proceed. Here I have written the common name, biological name, genus, family, order, and class and phylum of the housefly. Okay, in your NCERT you have a table. So you have to look at that table. Here I have taken only one component from that table, that is housefly. So what is the biological name of housefly? It is Musca domestica. So the genus is the first component, that is Musca, and species is the second component, that is domestica. Okay. So what is the name of the genus? It is Musca. The family that housefly belongs to is the Muscidae family. The order that it belongs to is Diptera. Class is Mammalia. Phylum is Arthropoda. So before this, we have seen that human beings belong to the class Mammalia, right? So there is a class called Mammalia, which consists of human beings also and housefly also. So Mammalia class consists of various orders. What is the order of human beings? Let's see here. Primates. Okay. So Mammalia also consists of primates, and it also consists of the order of housefly, that is Diptera. Okay, and there are various other orders as well. Okay, we have taken example of these two. So here Mammalia will also be a taxon, primates will also be a taxon, Diptera is also a taxon, right? And under Diptera you have housefly. So housefly is also a taxon, and under the primate we have human beings. So this is also a taxon. So there are categories at different levels, at the smallest level also, lowest level also, as well as at the highest level. Okay, so each category, whether it is at the lowest level or it is at highest level, it will be known as a taxa. Okay, so cat is also a taxa, dog is a taxa, mammalia is a taxa, hominidae is a taxa, Homo is a taxa, sapiens is a taxa. Everything basically is a taxa. Okay, every category, whether small or large, is known as a taxa. Okay, this I want to explain. Now, the last topic of this chapter is taxonomical aids, which is not included in the new syllabus of NCERT, I guess, but this might be important to you. So what are taxonomical aids? These are the sources through which we study about the organisms. Okay, we have a practical knowledge about the organisms. What we are having now is the theoretical knowledge. I am teaching, you are listening to me, or we read books to understand about the organisms. So all these are theoretical knowledge. These are not enough for us to have an in-depth knowledge of the organisms. Okay, so what is required for having an in-depth information or in-depth understanding about the organisms? These are the practical knowledge about them. So practical knowledge are gained through some sources, and these sources are known as taxonomical aids. Okay, and what are the requirements for the practical knowledge? First of all, intensive laboratory and field studies are required. Okay, just reading the book is not enough, right? Then the collection of the actual specimen of the organism is important. Okay, you have to look at the actual animal specimen or a living animal in order to understand about it. Okay, then these specimens, if the animal is dead, okay, any organism, it is dead, then these have to be stored and preserved for future reference along with the information written about it. Okay, so let's see what are the procedures and techniques that are used for preservation. Currently there are various techniques that are in use that help us in having a deep understanding about the organisms. So first one is herbarium. Okay, so herbarium gives us information about various plant species. Okay, this is related to plants only. Okay, here you will not see information about the animals. So what are herbarium? These are storehouse of collected plant specimens that are dried, pressed and preserved on sheets. Okay, so in schools, in earlier classes, we used to do this. We used to open our copies. Here we kept some flower or leaves, let's say, and we dried the flower and leaves and pressed it inside the copy. Okay, then we used to paste it, right? So similar kind of thing is herbarium. Here also you will see that different plant specimens will be dried, pressed and preserved on a sheet of paper. Okay, now on this sheet of paper there will be other information about the plants. Okay, and these sheets are arranged according to a universally accepted system of classification. Now, what are the information that are provided on this sheet? So, date and place of collection will be mentioned on that sheet. Then, English names of the species, local name, and botanical names. All these names will be mentioned on this sheet on which the plant specimen is preserved. Then, the family that the plant belongs to. So there are genus, species, kingdom, everything, but here only family is mentioned. Just remember this, okay? Then collector's name. The person who has collected this plant specimen, the name of that person will also be mentioned on this herbarium sheet, okay? So this is one of the important sources to study about plant species. Then the next one is botanical gardens. In case of herbarium, we saw that the plant was dried and preserved. Okay, so that was the specimen of the plant. That was not a living plant. That was some part of the plant that has died. Okay, but in case of botanical gardens, you will see living plants. So it is a collection of living plants for identification purposes. So plants will be safe, right? They will not be dried or they will not die. They will be living plants. And here also some information will be provided. Botanical and scientific names is very important, okay? And the family, again, the family to which the plant belongs is very important, okay? Genus and species are not mentioned, only family is mentioned. There are various examples of botanical gardens. So first one is Botanical Garden at Kew in England. This is one of the very famous botanical gardens. In India also we have many botanical gardens, out of which two famous ones are Indian Botanical Garden at Howrah in India, and the second one is National Botanical Research Institute. In short, we write it as NBR, National Botanical Research Institute, which is located in Lucknow, India. Okay, now these two were about the plants. Now we come to the animals. We have to understand about the animals. Then what are the sources that we use? One of the sources is museum, but museum is not just for animals. Here you will see information about the plants as well as animals. Okay. So museums have the collection of preserved plants and animal specimens for study and reference. You must have visited some museum. If you haven't visited, then you must visit. Okay. Here you will see that the plant or animal specimens are kept in some containers or jars. Okay. And they are kept in preservative solutions. In that container, some preservative solution will be there. Preservative. So that the specimen remains safe for use in long term. Okay. And in that solution the specimen will be present, and it's not always in the preservative solution. It might be preserved as dry specimens also. Okay. Now if we talk about insects, in what manner insects are preserved in museums. So first of all, insects are collected, then they have been killed. Okay, they are killed, then they are pinned. Okay, suppose this is a sheet. Okay, it might be a paper or anything like that. Here the insect is pinned. Using some pin we fix the insect specimen here. Okay, like this. And then these sheets are kept in insect boxes. Okay, on the top there will be a glass through which you will be able to look at the specimen of the insects. Okay, I don't know how many of you have seen such insect boxes, but if you visit your biology library, laboratory, then there you will be able to see this. Okay. Then in case of mammals, these are stuffed and preserved, or even skeleton of mammals are used. Okay. So all these will be seen in the museum. You must visit some museum. Okay. Then we come to the zoological parks. So in museums, we will be able to see the specimens of the animals or plants. Okay, that means there will be dead plants or animals in the museums, not the living plants or animals. But in zoological parks, we see the living animals, similar to the botanical parks where we see the living plants. Okay, so in zoological parks, in short, we say zoo. Okay, you must have visited zoos in your childhood. All of us have visited. Okay, so here we see living animals that are kept in protected environment. So natural environment is provided to them to keep them comfortable. Okay, and they are under human care. And these zoological parks help us to understand their food habits, their behavioral patterns, all these things. So I don't think this needs much explanation because we all know about zoological parks. Now the next thing is key, very important. This is, so keys are based on similarities and dissimilarities. Okay, and these have contrasting characters called couplets. So what happens in a key? Let me explain. Suppose we are talking about the animal. So it will have two contrasting characters. Two options will be present. Whether the animal has red blood or it does not have red blood. Okay. So red blood one side, and on the other side it will be no red blood. So you have to choose the best option, choose the appropriate option. Suppose you have to talk about the organism, let's say octopus. Okay, suppose you are talking about the octopus. So for octopus you have to choose these two, one of these two options, whether it has red blood or it does not have red blood. So we know that octopus does not have red blood. Okay, again, under no red blood there will be two options, whether it has hard body or it has soft body. Okay, hard body or soft body. So we all know that octopus has soft body, so we have to choose the soft body, right? Again, under soft body there will be two options, whether it has shell or it does not have shell. Like this is just an example. So there will always be two contrasting characters or two opposite options, and you will have to choose the appropriate one among them. So it is not just reading something. In case of herbarium sheet, we saw that all the informations will be provided. In the keys, all the information will not be provided directly. You will have to analyze it. Okay, you have to choose the correct one. You have to use your brain here. Okay, so here contrasting characters will be present, and these characters, that means that, for example, red blood or no red blood, these are present. Two contrasting characters are there, so these are known as couplets. Okay, similarly, hard body or soft body, so these are two contrasting characters, these are also known as couplets. Got it? So in case of key, choice is made between two opposite options as we have discussed. And each statement that is made in the key is known as lead or lead. Okay. Then separate taxonomic keys will be required for each taxonomic category. For example, family, let's write it here, family, genus, order, species. For each category, separate taxonomic keys will be required. Okay, and as we have discussed, these keys are analytical in nature because you have to analyze them. Okay, you cannot just read the fact. Here I have an example. If we are talking about the vertebrates, okay, so on the basis of having fur, there will be two options, yes or no, whether the vertebrate has fur or it does not have fur. So if we are talking about mammals, mammal will come under which category? Yes, it has fur. Okay, mammals do have fur on their body, so it will come here. Okay, mammal will come here. If we're talking about birds, birds do not have fur, so they will come on the other category. That means no, they do not have fur. Again, if they do not have fur, then whether they have feathers or not. So yes or no. So yes, birds will come under yes, they have feathers. Okay, but reptiles do not have feathers, so they will come under the category no, they do not have feathers. Again, there are various options. You can see that if they do not have feathers, again there are two options, whether they have dry skin or they have moist skin. So reptiles will come under the dry skin, and fish and frogs will come under the moist skin. Okay, again under the moist skin there are two contrasting characters, whether they have scales or they do not have scales. So fish have scales, so they will come under the scales, and amphibians, for example frog, do not have scales, so they will come under the other option. Okay, so at every level there are two contrasting characters, the appropriate one or the correct one has to be chosen. Got it? So you have to analyze the key, therefore key is important. So here we have done all the taxonomical aids, but there are some taxonomical aids which I want you to research about. These are manuals. This is your homework. Okay, you have to search about manuals, then flora, you have to search about monographs, and you have to search about the catalog. These are some of the taxonomical aids that you have to study about. Okay, you can use the internet for this. So that's all for today. I hope you enjoyed this session, and I hope this will be helpful to you. Right, so we'll come with next session with the next chapter. Till then, keep learning, keep scoring high. And if you haven't subscribed our channel yet, please subscribe it, and do like, share, and comment on this channel. And you can also visit our website www.examsnet.com. Thank you for today.